Pokemon is an absolutely monumental franchise. Whether it's anime or manga, various types of video games, or trading cards, since its introduction to Japan back in 1996, and subsequently to the rest of the world in 1998, it's enthralled people of many ages and has only continued to captivate new audiences with each generation of Pokemon added. Yet with each enthralling new set of Pokemon, and subsequent games that go along with them, there's one set of games out of Pokemon that we just haven't seen for a while. That game is, as the title of this video suggests, Pokemon Snap. Released in 1999, hot off the heels of the games that started it all, Red and Blue, the game brought something new and innovative to the table that hadn't really been seen in all that many video games: photography. Yet, when you think about it for a second, photography? The majority of people probably wouldn't want to play a game where all they do was take pictures of animals. However, I think part of the appeal and subsequent moderate success that the game had was precisely because we were getting to take photographs of our favorite Pokemon. Many of us that were kids at the time became absolutely engrossed in everything related to Pokemon, and this was another way for us to enjoy interacting with these new monsters on the scene. Hell, I was only 8 or so when this game was released. I honestly doubt I had all that much of a vested interest in photography or having a simple relaxing game to play. I just wanted to see my favorite Pokemon wander around, especially seeing as this was one of the earliest games where we got to see Pokemon in 3D. So, once again, I have to pose the question as to why we haven't seen another Pokemon game that follows this format. It was the 6th best-selling game in the US at the end of 1999 and was generally well received by most publications. However, it's important to look beyond the numbers and consider some factors that would attribute to the series never returning. I think first and foremost, you have to consider what I said earlier. Pokemon had just started out and already had a large following, so it's only natural that something with the Pokemon logo slapped onto it would sell fairly well, regardless of whether the game was all that great or not. Beyond that though, you have to consider the demographic. Despite the fact that it sold reasonably well in the States, we've never been a society that has cared all that much about more carefree leisure titles like this one. Animal Crossing is pretty much the one notable exception that I can think of off the top of my head. Otherwise, they really don't hold a massive presence in our culture. A larger focus, especially nowadays, tends to be on games that are all about the intense action and are very flashy, so it's not terribly hard to see why this game never got picked up again. Despite all this being in the way of a potential comeback for the series, would I still like to see it make a snappy return? Abso-fucking-lutely. So if we were to get a sequel to Pokemon Snap, how would it play out? Or rather, how should it be set up? I think to answer that question, it's important to go back and look at the original game and see what problems it had. And yes, it had some problems. The biggest one I can think of with the original title were the lack of Pokemon. When you count up the amount of Pokemon in the original, you discover that you can only capture photos of 63 out of the original 151. That's pretty bad, honestly. If they were to ever make a sequel to the game, they would have to have a substantial amount of Pokemon in the game. Imagine being able to take pictures of every single Pokemon. Does that sound pretty good to you? Cause it sounds pretty good to me. Another thing I always felt drew you out of the experience slightly were the areas in the original. While they have some creativity, they overall aren't immersive enough to keep pulling you back in, and this is where I think the actual regions seen in the main Pokemon games would make for a more grand and immersive experience. We've all played enough Pokemon, or at least most of us have, to know how the regions look, and it would allow us to more accurately understand just where the hell we are rather than some nondescript island. If we were given a wide range of selections to explore from these regions, and a good amount of diversity as well, then you'd already have a great start to a new game. Not only that, but I think it would be interesting if they allowed you to decide what path through the route you'd want to take. Imagine being able to draw the path you want to take through the route, and having a ton of different options to choose from. Just within one route, we could have a bunch of different choices that would affect not only what Pokemon we see, but maybe what else happens just from the environment. Or say if the game were no longer on rails. A free roam approach would be really interesting, as it would be a great way of giving people some freedom to get the shots that they want in some grand environments. Granted, I still feel like some sort of aspect would need to be included to increase the difficulty. For example, a time limit. This way you would have the ability to roam around in more space, but at the same time, you'd have to use your time wisely to get the shots that you want. Even beyond that, maybe they could just have two separate modes, a main mode and an exploration mode. The main mode would be similar to the story mode from the original game, where you get pictures for Professor Oak, and the on-rail sections for each level are just much longer than the original game, while the exploration mode would be really just more casual and all about free roaming. You know, I actually kind of like that idea. Now, it should come as no surprise really when I say that the Wii U gamepad would make for an awesome interface for taking pictures. You want to talk about making an immersive experience that wouldn't feel gimmicky either? The Wii U gamepad is pretty much set up perfectly for a more casual game where we get to take photographs. Like seriously, just look at the Wii U gamepad screen. Make that your viewfinder for a camera. Done. Not only that, but imagine the integration that could happen with the Miiverse. I don't feel like it would be much of a stretch to allow players to use their Miis in-game, and this would further immerse players into getting the pictures that they want of their favorite Pokemon. Also, I feel like this game would make for a pretty awesome 3DS game as well. Pokemon Snap on the go? Man, sign me up for that. These are just a few of the possibilities that I've come up with, and I'm sure you guys could all come up with some awesome ideas yourselves, so you know what? Leave them in the comments down below. That's kind of the whole point of these videos, is to get some discussion going and seeing like what we think of these series and where they can go in the future. Hopefully this video has inspired some of you to get Pokemon Snap out again and get some fresh ideas for a sequel. But anyway, I'm Wally the Legend, and I will see you all next time.